Hello and welcome back to another exciting, edifying, ebullient episode of The Library is Open. See, in my head I sound like Maria Callas. Not so much. I don't know why I sang then. I wasn't planning it. I just opened my mouth and things came out. Said the actress to the bishop and other rubbish jokes. Hi, welcome back to The Library is Open, as I say. And I always say things like excellent or educational or edifying, so I think it's just become like a little theme. Maybe you could do like a bingo, or what's that? You know, when you take a shot when people say things on like TV shows and stuff like that. Maybe every time I use like a word beginning with E to describe the episode, maybe you could take a shot of whatever your beverage of choice is. I personally prefer an iced tea or an orange pekoe that I keep for the middle classes. It's a Victoria Wood line. Yes, so we're back. I don't know why I'm being excessively, what's the word, eccentric today. Other than, I don't know, what do I blame? Cabin fever, maybe? Cabin fever, certainly. I had like a moment the other day where I was just like, really sort of missing those little moments of what's the word, just like, you know, everyday social interactions. Like I was just like, I'd love to go for a coffee or just sit and be around like bustle of people, just go and sit in a coffee shop in the city or something and just watch the world go by. That'd be nice, that, wouldn't it? But alas we can't, so we have to make our own fun. And you know, you're enabling me to do that by being here, so thank you. That and obviously the reading, the books, the reason why we're here. I would just like to point out I'm repping my girls today to cheer me up. My little Spice Girls. Thank you. I love this t-shirt. I think I got this in like Blackpool. You know those like shops that are like on the front? Well, if you know Blackpool, then you do, and if you don't, then sorry. But if you don't know Blackpool, how will I describe it? Like a sort of like Las Vegas, but post-apocalyptic, maybe. That's not a criticism, by the way. I love Blackpool. Big fan of Blackpool. But yeah, this is the kind of thing they would sell there. So, you know, it's not official merchandise, whatever. But I kind of like that. So, anyway. This week's book is a really interesting choice for me, actually. I say that mostly because it's not the normal thing I would go for, I think. And I'll tell you why I got it. Well, I'll show you the book first. So, literally just finished reading this, like, about half an hour ago. And it's this little beauty. Noah Hawley's Before the Fall. And the reason I bought this was because there's a podcast that I listen to called, it's True Crime and Comedy Podcast, if you don't know it, called My Favourite Murder. It's really, really good. So there's two women on it, American, and they go over like true crimes and so on and so forth, and they each tell a story every week about a true crime. Anyway, they're always sort of like recommending books on there as well, and one of them, Georgia, it's Georgia and Karen, she'd said she'd been reading Before the Fall, so I was like, oh, I'll get a copy of that. This was obviously weeks ago, months even, and I've just got around to reading it now. But it's like, I think, I don't know, you know when you just get an impulse and someone goes, oh, this was good, and you think, oh, I'll just get hold of that, so I did, and I think it was like £1 and some change or something like that, which is good, because, I don't know, I feel a bit conflicted about how I feel about it, because there's things I really liked about it, and then there's things that I was like, yeah, with hindsight, this really wasn't the book for me. But I don't mean that in like an overly critical way of the author or anything. I'll expand a bit more. So it's by the guy who wrote, so Noah Hawley is the creator of Fargo, that TV series, which, you know, in the interest of full disclosure, I haven't watched because I don't think I'd be particularly interested. Although, you know, you shouldn't prejudge, but I doubt it. In the same way that I wouldn't watch something like Narcos or anything like that. It's not something that appeals to me. That kind of genre of like suspense, thriller, and so on and so forth. That's not really my thing. Because this is, is it a thriller? The New York Times said it was one of the year's best suspense novels, which leads me to think, oh, thriller. But it's kind of not at the same time. It's weird. Brief resume of the plot. Our sort of main protagonist is an artist called Scott, who is like a sort of washed up painter who's about to embark on the second phase of his career, as it were. So basically, he started off as like an artist painter, whatever, and then sort of fell into alcoholism and like unhealthy behavioural patterns, and he thought all was lost, hit rock bottom, and then he moved to Martha's Vineyard, which apparently is an island or something. I don't know, I'm not familiar with the complete geography of the United States, but they mention it a lot on telly, so presumably it's nice. And and then he starts painting a brand new series of paintings and sort of rediscovers his passion for it, whatever. Anyway, he meets this woman called Maggie, who is married to a guy called David, who is the sort of creator of this news network that's very sort of probably somewhere extreme right of like Fox News or something. Very much driven by this guy who's like in the cult of personality called Bill Milligan, who's like a sort of fiercely patriotic American newscaster. You know what I'm saying here. And they sort of do like hard-hitting exposés and stuff like that, and there's some shady business. Anyway, he's a multi-millionaire. Anyway, they've been on holiday in Martha's Vineyard, and they're heading back to New York, where they live. Anyway, Scott has to go to New York, so the wife, who he's met at the farmer's market, invites him to come on their private plane, and she also invites her mate Sarah and her husband, who's about to be, we discover, indicted for trading with countries that there's laws against the US trading with, basically. So there's all sorts of like money sort of machinations and so on and so forth going on, for corruption, things like that. Anyway, it's like a 29-minute flight, but 18 minutes into the flight or thereabouts, the plane crashes into the ocean, and the only survivors are Scott and this little boy, who is the son of Maggie. He's 4 years old, and Scott has to rescue him by swimming in the complete pitch black to land, and then they survive. Spoiler. It's not really a spoiler, you find that out straight away. And then it sort of goes into about investigating how the plane crashed, what led up to it. The TV news guy, Bill, gets involved, where he's trying to throw suspicion on Scott. And then it sort of goes back and forth in time to look at each of the people who died on the plane, including the pilot and the flight attendant, and like look at their stories, what led up to them being there, sort of thing. So it's sort of not really a chronological story per se. It's sort of like dips and dabs. It's not a phrase, but it is now. So yeah, it's difficult to sort of sum up, because there is an element of mystery to it as well, but it's also not really a murder mystery per se, in the sense that the investigations are obviously all at a like federal level, which is, I'm not that interested in reading about like governmental things or anything like that. I'm not that bothered. I much prefer a Miss Marple or someone like that, ferreting around in a village, looking in bins and, finding lemon juice letters and things like that, and heating them over candles. Sad but true. So there's not really that to hook into, although the final bits, I won't tell you the spoiler, but the final chapters reveal what actually happened and what led to it, and it's a slow process getting there. But I mean, that's okay. It's meditative, maybe. I think maybe my main issue, and I don't want this to come across as a criticism because I think everyone's tastes are different, but like, I always felt at one removed from the character. And at first I thought, is that just because there's no I statements, as in Scott is the protagonist but he's not narrating the story per se? But I thought, no, it's like looking at the characters through a sheet of glass. So you're allowed to get close enough but not too close. And actually, It reminded me a little bit of, so I suppose it makes sense really if he's the guy who wrote Fargo, those sort of TV shows where you get like exposition of the character, or rather exploration of the character and backstory and so on and so forth, but it's such a careful mix, isn't it, of giving us that information, but it's more about how you do it. Like, some shows, some books are really good at imparting information like that and making you feel part of the action, so you're invested, whereas some just sort of give you the facts, and can't always discern what it is, but you still feel removed from them. Like, there's a review on the back here that says, from the Irish Independent, says, the characters are so real and because of this their fates matter. Before the Fall is one of those books. I'm not sure that's something I agree with. I'm not really invested in these people because I don't feel like I really know them. It's a bit like reading a rap sheet or something. It's like, that doesn't mean you know somebody, does it? That being said, there are moments that I really liked. So when Scott sort of fights back against the system of, propaganda and like this newscaster character who's trying to cast him in the role of villain, those bits are really good. But I think that's about, like, I love to cheer for the underdog, and I love watching conservatism crumble and be exposed as false, misleading, or entirely biased. So I enjoy that a lot. There's a really good scene, actually, with the newscaster and Scott right near the end of the book, which is brilliant. And I was like, yeah, go for it. But then again, I don't feel like I now care what happens to Scott, in a way. So I suppose that's interesting in itself. There are some lovely bits of writing in here. I would like to point out one that I really enjoyed. I turned the page down at the bottom just because I thought, that's really interesting. Because I think when it's at its best, this book, it's sort of an exploration of, because when was this published? It's fairly recent, surely, 2016. It's a sort of review of what life, particularly American life, looks like, in the second decade of the new millennium. We're entering the third now, and very much post 9/11. There's a bit where one of the investigators is watching a video. I won't tell you what, but he sort of meditates on this. He's like, how to describe the things we see on screen, experiences we have that are not ours. Interesting. After so many hours of watching TV, the morning talk shows, the soaps, the nightly news, and then into prime time, The Bachelor, Game of Thrones, The Voice. After a decade of studying viral videos of late-night hosts and funny or die clips emailed by friends, how are we to tell the difference between them if the experience of watching them is the same? To watch the Twin Towers fall and on the same device in the same room watch a marathon of Everybody Loves Raymond. To Netflix an episode of The Care Bears with your children, and then later that night, after the kids are in bed, search for amateur couples who film themselves breaking the laws of several states. To video conference from your work computer with Jan and Michael from the office about the new timesheet protocols, then click, against your better instincts, on an embedded link to a jihadi beheading video. How do we separate these things in our brains when the experience of watching them, sitting or standing before the screen, perhaps eating a bowl of cereal, either alone or with others, but in any case, always with part of us rooted in our own daily slog, distracted by deadlines, trying to decide what to wear on a date, is the same. Watching, by definition, is different from doing. And I thought, that's really interesting, isn't it? And, as somebody who writes for things to be watched, I think I love that concept of how do you separate the things that you consume visually when they come from the same place? Does that make them the same? Does that make them, what change occurs in either the atmosphere or the viewer or the actual broadcast itself that makes those things distinct and not all part of this same weird cloud of like consumption? So I just thought that was really interesting. I like things that I can think about but not necessarily come to any conclusions with. I've been reading a lot about I'm not going to review these on this channel because this is specialist. I've been doing a lot of reading for work around sort of theatre making practice in other cultural traditions and things like that, and I'm sort of doing a lot of like critical thinking just for myself, really, just for my own practice, about what consumption is and how it's presented or served to audiences. So I thought that was just, I really, really liked that. And maybe that's the similar thing to when I say that I felt at one remove from the characters. Maybe two things can present the same information in only a tiny different way, and it completely changes your experience of it. So yeah, fascinating. Food for thought, anyway. Food for thought. Another one I want to mention is, just because I think it's really rhythmic. I really like rhythmic text. There's a bit later on where one of the characters is talking about sort of like memories of being a student at school and so on and so forth. And he talks about he was on the football team at high school. And this is what he says: the football field where boys are hammered into men by patterns and repetition. Steve Hammond and Billy Rascal, Scab Dunaway, and that big Mexican with hands the size of ribeyes. What was his name? A fly ball shagged on a cloud-free spring day, pads and helmets shrugged on in a jockstrap locker room, stinking of heat and the fight or fuck pheromones of hot teen musk. The oiled mitt between your mattress and box spring, and how you always slept better with it under there. Hard ball wrapped in a web of leather thumbs. Boys on the verge of what comes next, grappling in the dirt, using their heads to open alleyways. And how it felt to run forever and never get tired, to stand in a dusty dugout, trash-talking relief pitch as your buddy Chris lowing like a cow, the coffin corner and the crack-back block. The primal monkey joy of picking dirt from your cleats with any old stick, a bunch of boys on a bench spitting sunflower shells and digging down deep in the rubber. The in-between hop and the lefty switch. Hope. Always hope. And how when you're young, every game you play feels like the reason the world exists. Now, I'm aware that I did some little performative bits there, but I liked how it tasted in my mouth. When I read that bit, I was like, oh, I just want to speak that out loud. You know, the rhythms and the like plosives of the speech and stuff. So I liked that. Good. I always do that, don't I? Say things that I'm like proper thinking about and then undermine it by going, "Have a good thought." But yes, that was good. Oh, one more thing I wanted to mention. What's really interesting is I think, and it's mad because it doesn't happen consistently. In the sense that Noah Hawley, I think, for the most part, writes men better than women, but not across the board, because there's certain things where he'll write something that a character's thinking, and I was left going, that's definitely a man thinking about what a woman would do. Obviously, everyone's different, so you can't make generalizations, but, you know, in that situation. And then I thought, but is that actually an ineptitude of the writing, or is that the ineptitude of the character that he's showing us? So I don't know. But I did think at certain points, there were certain points where I was just a bit like, it's a bit masculine thriller writing. And yet, on the other hand, some of it's really sensitively done. So, you know, who can say, Noah, what you doing? What you doing, babe? You've done good things with this, and the plotting's great, but I don't know. But then again, maybe that makes it a good book, because I don't know. You know, maybe that's a completely valid reading experience. I'm glad that I read it. I wouldn't. He's written quite a few more, actually. To be fair, he seems fairly prolific as a writer. I'm probably not going to buy any more of his. That's not a criticism per se. It's more just like I would be reading it for the sake of it, because it's not something I'm grabbing out of pleasure. So, can we appreciate this cover as well? That's the little boy, I presume, who's supposed to be on the plane, I imagine, looking out, and it really reminds me of the back of Elliot from E.T. You know, you can just see like going into the horizon. That's not what it is at all, and I don't even think it's supposed to be that, but the mind does what it does. So yeah, that's Noah Hawley, Before the Fall. Do I recommend? Depends what you're into. If you're into like suspense, thriller, and occasionally being at one remove from the people that you're reading about, yeah, why not? There are much worse ways to pass a day. Let's just say that, and some of it is very skillfully done. But it is kind of making me want to watch an episode of Fargo now, just to see if that writing is the same. I mean, obviously it'll be different because that's a performative context, but I mean, do you know that sort of grip on the characters and so on and so forth? So I'll either watch an episode or I'll Google some reviews of that just to see what I think. But yeah, no, I'm glad I read that just and reviewed it on this channel because, like I say, it's so out of what I would normally pick for me. So I think that's interesting in of itself, isn't it? Because I'm sure you've all got your own personal tastes, things that you enjoy. So have you noticed I'm at a different angle as well again today? Look, you're at a different angle today. You see the big clock in the background. Yeah, I'm sort of taking you on a magical mystery tour of my house at the moment. I'm either following the sunlight, I should say, through various room windows, or I'm just a bit like, shake it up a bit. Let's go and sit in the hall, you know, because in these quarantine days, this is my backdrop. This is my backdrop. It's my life. But thanks for tuning in. As always, I love your support. It really does mean a lot to me, and thank you. Drop some comments, please. Drop some likes. Let's chat more. I love it when you tell me that you've found some of these books and read them, and then we can have a chat about what you thought. Because comment is free. And I love it when you recommend me things. And 9 times out of 10, I'll usually just buy a copy, and then we can have that conversation. So lovely. So nice to see you nice. And I will see you on the next episode. Shall I sing the outro as well? That's not very Maria Callas, is it? That was more bloody... whatchamacallit? I don't know what that was, actually. But let's go with it. This has been The Library is Open. Put away your library card, but not before you disinfect it first. Les Mis, it sounds like Les Mis, doesn't it? Sort of postmodern Les Mis. It's a good idea, isn't it? It's not, it's a terrible idea. Goodbye, dear friends. Goodbye, dear hearts. And I will see you again soon when the library opens its virtual doors to welcome you, my gentle readers. Lots of love. Take care of yourselves and be safe.